Hello there. This video is going to be an overview of Homo sapien invictus, or the Nietzscheans, of Gene Roddenberry's Andromeda. Now, as much as possible, we're going to follow the on-screen canon, but we will be including some information from beta canon sources, as what's seen on screen does contradict itself along the way. In the year CY 8400, Paul Museveni and approximately 3,000 human followers would leave Earth for a fresh start. They would be destined to arrive at the Omari globular cluster just outside the Milky Way, eventually finding the world of Fountainhead. Here, they would work to create a superior race of humans, which would eventually become known as the Nietzscheans. These first augmented humans were not the Nietzscheans we would eventually see, lacking things like the bone blades. At Fountainhead, they would convert one of the starships that took them there into what would become the first capital of the Nietzschean race, a space station in orbit. Under the guidance of Museveni, they would begin to create the new species. He would create a clone of himself with the same augmentations that he would give to the others. This clone will be known as Drago Museveni. Drago would be the true progenitor of the Nietzschean race, not just a standard augmented human, but a true Nietzschean, and the first of his kind. He would go on to found the first Nietzschean pride, the Museveni Pride. As a side note, the matriarch of the Nietzschean race would be Becca Valentine. She would be encountered by Paul Museveni due to some wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff involving the Route of Ages, where he would go forward in time from his perspective to the Sephra system, where he would encounter her and select her to be the genetic matriarch of the Nietzschean race, including Drago Museveni. Although this would be something of a continuity break with established storylines from earlier seasons. Later, after Drago's death, the Museveni Pride would be absorbed or possibly destroyed by the rising Drago Pride, who would later ally with the Katsov Pride to become the Drago Katsov, who would be the dominant power of the Nietzschean Prides in the Andromeda series. At this time, overall, the Nietzscheans were known as the Nietzschean Alliance, which was a time of peace, somewhat, between the Nietzscheans for many centuries, before they would be re-encountered by the Commonwealth and humanity. After re-establishing contact with their long-lost cousins, humans, the Nietzscheans would be curious but a little wary of the Commonwealth, but would ultimately become members of the Commonwealth. Now, the Nietzscheans of this time shouldn't be confused with the Nietzscheans of the Dark Ages after the fall of the Commonwealth. At this time, the Nietzschean people were much more unified, more inclined to squabble and bicker rather than openly fight with one another. The Nietzschean prides were a collection of houses and other such loose alliances between individual Nietzscheans, more about competition. The Nietzschean Alliance as a state would exist within the Commonwealth at peace, and the Nietzscheans would rise to become some of the Commonwealth's greatest architects, scholars, and teachers. However, over time, the Nietzscheans would begin to view the Commonwealth as weak, particularly after the destruction of a Nietzschean colony world at the hands of the Magog, and instead of retaliation, the Commonwealth would negotiate. Where over 1 billion Nietzscheans would have died, there was no retribution. After this event, the Nietzscheans would begin to view the Commonwealth as weak, and as they viewed themselves as strong, as they were bred to be superior, they considered that the Commonwealth was no longer suitable for them, and if it was willing to negotiate with monsters, then it wasn't worth being a part of. The Nietzscheans, under the ruling Drago Katsov Pride, would begin to plan a revolt against the Commonwealth, where they would take it over and reform it into a Nietzschean-led empire. which would be only partially successful, as the Nietzscheans would destroy the Commonwealth successfully, but thanks to a betrayal by the Jaguar Pride, the Nietzschean Empire would never truly come into existence, and in the succeeding years the Nietzscheans would descend into internal conflict and squabbling, resulting in the destruction of some Nietzschean prides such as the Kodiak Pride at the hands of the larger, stronger prides. This was unlike what the Nietzscheans had been bred for. The Nietzscheans were not bred to be a race who would always beat each other's throats. They were bred to be a race of warrior poets, and therefore be a beacon of civilization to the galaxy, not its downfall. In many ways, during the 300-year-long night, the Nietzscheans would suffer just as much as the races that they conquered, or had hurt or damaged in some way, shape or form. Without cohesion, without unity, the Nietzscheans would fall upon each other, and ultimately never become the true power that they had aspired to become. Some Nietzscheans even regretting the fall of the Commonwealth. The Nietzscheans around this time would briefly reunify under a false messiah of Tir Anasazi, who had been genetically resequenced to appear to be the genetic reincarnation of Drago Museveni, and unify the Nietzschean prides under his banner in an attempt to build a Nietzschean-led empire. However, this would be unsuccessful, as he was killed by the Harbinger of the Abyss, and upon his death the Nietzschean prides would once again descend into their more, by this point, customary infighting. Ultimately, although the Nietzschean plans for galactic domination were unsuccessful, the Nietzscheans as a race, on the whole, were a successful species. However, tainted by arrogance and a sense of superiority over others, which led them in many ways to their own demise, the Nietzscheans could have been one of the galaxy's greatest civilizations. Instead, they became its destroyers. The future of the Nietzschean race beyond this point is still unclear. However, there is hope that they may overcome their petty differences and reunify as a species, hopefully, or possibly under the leadership of their true genetically reincarnated messiah, Tamerlane Anasazi, Tir's son, whose DNA he used to alter himself to pretend to be that very messiah. He may be able to reunify the Nietzschean prides, and as some of them had shown an interest in becoming members of the Commonwealth, that may still become their fate, as they may rejoin the system's Commonwealth at some point.